Hey there, Jordan Chariton live Friday, March 4th. The year is 2022. Hope everybody's having a lovely day. I am delighted to, well, I'm not so delighted, but happy to be back. I was on a mini vacation, which I planned long before a war broke out. So got some relaxation with my wife over the last few days. But happy to be back. And thank you to Tina Desiree Berg, as well as Steve Grumbine, who both filled in for me while I was gone. You'll be seeing more of both of them as we go forward. Smash the like button, thumbs up button right under the live stream. The more people that press that like button, the more people that will see this live stream. And I'm not going to try and give you every little update in this war because I can't, and I don't have the resources. There's obviously a lot of propaganda out there, so it's very hard if you're not there to confirm everything. What we do know, before I bring on my first guest, who I'm really excited about, what we do know is a fire broke out yesterday at the largest nuclear plant in Europe. The fire broke out right outside the perimeter of the plant. Ukrainian officials say that they did not see any levels of radiation go up. That's what they say. We hope they're telling the truth as far as that radiation levels have not shot up. This was going on due to shelling that was happening, Russian shelling near this plant, and a fire broke out. So if I get any updates, I will let you know. I always like to preface things. I'm certainly not the foreign policy expert here. I'm a domestic guy, but obviously this is important to cover. So I will try and, put disclaimers of what I know for sure and what is just Ukrainian officials saying or Russian officials saying, which obviously there's a lot of propaganda to go around. Without further ado, I want to first invite on Assal Rad. And please correct me if I have botched how to pronounce your name.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Hi, Jordan.
Hi. And Assal, you are with the National Iranian
Council.
The National Iranian American Council. You are PhD in Middle Eastern history. And I wanted to have you on because as I was on vacation, and I kind of feel bad saying that because people are fleeing war, but I had this scheduled. I was just like looking on my phone at some of the most racist reports from mainstream media. I don't even, the sad part is they probably didn't even realize how racist what they were saying was. And then I started reading around, and obviously there is a stark contrast going on in the open arms for mostly majority white Ukrainian refugees in Poland and elsewhere, compared to Afghanistan refugees. We could go down the list: Syrian refugees, Somalian refugees. Before I get to you, I wanted to play the first clip, which I just was so disturbing to me. Colin, if we could play that.
Sorry, it's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles and his helicopters and his rockets.
And so, of course, I understand and respect the emotion. What you were outlining there is this tension between longer-term efforts to apply pressure to Vladimir.
Top Ukrainian official highlighting that it's people with blonde hair and blue eyes that are having to flee. Colin, if we could also play the next one, which was a CBS reporter.
Now with the Russians marching in, it's changed the calculus entirely. Tens of thousands of people have tried to flee the city. There will be many more. People are hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen. So it's partly human nature, but they are not in denial.
So let's start with the blonde hair and blue eyes comment. To me, whatever his intentions were, to me is obviously giving that nationality or race higher significance than other types of refugees.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen those clips over and over again, and I've seen so many more because there's just so many clips like that. I don't even know. It's hard to wrap your mind around the fact that so openly you hear just blatantly racist things. But no matter how many times I've seen it, every time I see it, I'm still a little bit shocked. Just because they're saying sort of what we've all been saying for, by we all, I mean, activists who have tried to point out racism, both domestically in the United States and global phenomenons of racism, how racism plays into our global war on terror, just our general foreign policy stance on so many issues. And now, because there's a sort of comparative issue, it's so blatant. And I mean, to try and I've made some comments and I've had people say things to me even before we saw this sort of slew of commentary. I remember making comments just initially because the initial reaction from the United States and Europe to the invasion of Ukraine compared to when those countries themselves invade countries, especially the United States, is just wildly different. And it shouldn't be. And one of the talking points that keeps getting thrown out is like, oh, that's whataboutism. Like, you can't talk about US invasions. You can't talk about how we've treated Muslim and Arab and other and African refugees. Of course you can. It's not whataboutism. It's consistency. It's pointing out hypocrisy because those very systems, those very notions of order don't work if they're not applied to everyone. And we're clearly not applying the same standards to everybody. The fact that you can hear, I mean, this is not a fringe narrative. This is not something you're hearing on some kind of far right extreme program. These are all mainstream media sources, and you're seeing it in multiple languages in multiple countries. And the ongoing theme is if you are blonde hair and blue eyed, if you're white, if you're European, somehow you are more deserving of sympathy and compassion. Now, let me be perfectly clear. Ukrainians are equally deserving of compassion and sympathy. But that's the problem is it's not that they're not getting it. It's that all of these other groups who have been suffering through war for decades have never gotten that kind of sympathy. And you keep hearing these Orientalist themes as if violence is inherent to, say, the Middle East, right? It's a region of violence. And it's completely devoid of the context of the violence that has been imposed on it by outside powers, for instance, in recent decades, the United States.
Well, that was my next question, actually, because besides the, gross term civilized, which almost makes it sound like Iraqis or Afghanistans are like, uncivilized monkeys or something. But when he talks about, areas that have been in conflict for, decades and decades, they weren't just in conflict amongst themselves. That was a lot of that conflict was imposed by the United States, starting with, we could go all the way back to the first Gulf War, but Afghanistan, obviously, and then Iraq. So it's almost like he doesn't register that, like, not only do we not treat those refugees the same as how we have open arms for Ukrainians, but that refugee crisis in large part was created by the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so the language, though, it's not new for anyone who has, studied the history of colonialism. I mean, we are talking about language that is hundreds of years old. This is how slavery was justified. This is how genocide in the Americas was justified. This is how colonialism throughout Asia and Africa was justified. It was justified based on the fact that European civilization was superior and that they were, taming or educating, savages or barbarians, or how this is actual language that was used to describe all of these peoples across the world. And so there's a certain point of irony when I see it, right? When I see a commentary that says, Europe is civilized and anything and its offshoots, of course, and anything that is not Europe and its offshoots is considered uncivilized. I think about the number of conflicts that we've seen in Europe. Violence is inherent to the Middle East, and yet World War I and World War II were fought in Europe. Colonization of the entire Americas was done by Europeans. These genocidal campaigns were done by Europeans, and yet somehow that is completely outside of the analysis that makes one apparently naturally violent and the other one not violent, or its violence is considered benevolent. And that's the way that this is always framed. It's not the same kind of violence. That violence is savage. This violence is to help. And so that's how we always frame these types of conflicts, and how it was framed when the United States, for instance, when the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, it wasn't an accident that President Bush at the time used phrases like a crusade to describe it, right? These are very historical beliefs that are so ingrained in our psyche. And in our psyche, I mean by in the psyche of white Europeans and white Americans, that we can't even see how racist it is. That's the interest. That's why I'm saying the fact that this is a completely mainstream. You notice in those clips, it's not just that they're saying it; it's that no one is pushing back.
Yeah.
Right. There's other human beings sitting there that could be like, "Are you sure you're being careful about your language?" But no one pushes back. It's just so accepted because these ideas are so ingrained, and that's why it's so important to talk about the issue of racism, Orientalism, othering all of these groups in the way that we discuss foreign policy.
Right. And I also think there's another element here, and that is brazen verbal racism. I bring up President Trump proposing Muslim bans. Obviously, he did not want refugees coming here. All the anti-immigrant fervor and rhetoric, the wall, all those things. I mean, he wasn't really hiding it. It was not a dog whistle. It was a siren. But so people like Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, very few Republicans, they would very loudly criticize that and speak up for refugees, this and that. So when you have that very clear racism from Trump that the quote unquote resistance is going after, but then Trump is gone and the resistance is basically signaling that kind of racism, only without being so obvious, meaning we need, the double standards that we're speaking of. Can you kind of talk about, all these liberals rightly criticize Trump, but I don't think they realize they're kind of low key advocating not as brazen like a Muslim ban, but certainly not being consistent with the humanitarian aid for brown and black people versus white people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, our politics have become polarized, and we have so many examples of that, but it's become so extreme that, to your point, if Trump does something or did something, you had a certain amount of backlash from centrists, from leftists, from liberals, from Democrats. And now, even if President Biden has the exact same policy, it's not treated the same way. So it's not a policy position that's being criticized. It's, as long as it's not my party doing it, then it's fine. And that's completely inconsistent with a value-based system, right? I mean, you can say that if basically it has nothing to do with values, but we use those talking points when it's our opposition that's in power. And so it makes them completely meaningless. I mean, if you look at the Biden administration, you had a decision a few weeks ago that after freezing the assets that belong to the Central Bank of Afghanistan, which is creating basically an economic collapse in Afghanistan, where 23 million people are facing starvation. 23 million people in Afghanistan face starvation. What did the Biden administration also decide to do? To steal half of it and frame it in all sorts of ways as, no, this is about, legal cases in the United States. I don't understand how domestic U.S. law can justify something that is stealing from another country, right? That doesn't work. You have to use international law when you're talking about something that's not just about our own country. And there's it's crickets. There's almost no backlash towards this fact. But all of a sudden, we have this humanitarian outcry about Ukraine. And again, we should, because it is an invasion. You have 1 million people who have already fled the country, but in part, the reason why 1 million people have fled the country is because they had the ability to do so, right? It's not that there weren't that many refugees in other cases, it's that they didn't have the ability to so quickly be able to flee from their own borders. They've been stopped at every sort of border so that they would not be able to cross. So the disparity is both, to your point, in the sort of racialized way that it is, but also politically and domestically in the United States, it's treated completely differently under the Biden administration. And that's, that flies in the face of anything that liberals use, Democrats used to criticize President Trump. And, that'll come back as a sort of, those types of criticisms will come back to haunt us later, because they will be used as talking points against whoever the Democratic president is, whoever the candidates are. All of those things will then be used as talking points against that party as well.
Right. Absolutely. And I want to reference one of your tweets that I thought was really right on, because there's also an element, not specifically of racism, but basically conflating Vladimir Putin and, the Russian oligarchs and all that with the Russian people, and almost like, condemning or guilt by association by Russian people. So you tweeted out, if ordinary Russians are responsible for the actions of their government and deserve to be collectively punished with destitution, wouldn't logic dictate that Americans are responsible for U.S. endless wars that have killed hundreds of thousands of people and sanctioned starving millions more? I couldn't have said it better, but can you kind of expand on that? Because I've heard, even from people in my own life who mean well, but it's this thinking like, well, Vladimir Putin, he's only going to take it seriously and back down if his people turn against him. And the only way for his people to turn against them is for them to feel the pain. Well, you want that reversed on you based on the United States' God knows how many war crimes we've committed?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, the reality of it is that is the logic, right? The fact that you're hearing some of the commentary that just says, there's no neutral Russian. Of course there is. How about the ones who've been arrested for protesting the war? Where are our anti-war protests, right? Like again, I just referenced right now, 23 million Afghans at this very moment face starvation, and we are directly responsible for that. No one is protesting or doing anything about it. 13 million Yemenis face starvation right now as we speak in the world's worst humanitarian crisis, which has been ongoing now for 7 years, led by Saudi Arabia. But guess who's arming Saudi Arabia? The United States. So not only are we war criminals, we also arm war criminals. At what point are we responsible for any of our own actions? And the idea, in fact, that you would collectively punish the civilian population, that goes against international law entirely. So you have people who are evoking international law to say, hey, you can't invade a sovereign nation. That's what international law says. Who then want to go ahead and violate international law by saying we can collectively punish an entire civilian population.
Right.
This selective kind of outrage, the selective application of international law is part of the reason why we are in the current situation that we're in. And that's the part that nobody ever wants to talk about. Forget the acute decisions made by the administration. If we want to talk about NATO expansion, none of that excuses an invasion of a sovereign country. War, if you are anti-war, you have to be anti-war across the board. There's an excuse for war. That's exactly why we created international institutions, to find diplomatic resolutions that fall short of war. But, the fact that we want to put pressure on this sort of hysteria around Russia, then why aren't we held responsible? We would never, ever be okay with the idea that millions of Americans should lose their livelihoods, lose their life savings, not have access to medicines, not have, face food insecurity, any of these things because of the actions of our government. And arguably, we have more of a reason to be held responsible because we are, in fact, at least we claim, to be a democratic society. And therefore, the government is a government of the people. Whereas US officials themselves say Putin is an authoritarian.
Right.
Russians did not vote for him, right? This is the thinking from the US. So I'm just using the discourse of US officials to say, then wouldn't we be more responsible for the actions of our government? But that's just not how it works. You don't collectively punish civilians. But this has become a policy position of the United States in its use of economic warfare. And to be clear, the only reason this doesn't happen to Americans is because no country has the power to reciprocate. Right. The world economy revolves around the US dollar, and the US economy is dominant in a way where it is the sole power that can do this to any other state.
Right. And I also wanted to point out, because you're with the National Iranian Council, that our sanctions on Iran have very much harmed Iranian citizens, that the same logic has been used, that, the Iranian citizens need to be punished for Iranian leadership.
Absolutely. And actually, since you bring that up, and since we were talking about the inconsistency of criticism between Trump and Biden, Joe Biden in April of 2020 wrote a statement, or had a statement in his name at least, that specifically called on the Trump administration to ease sanctions on Iran because of the COVID-19 pandemic, because he pointed out in his own statement that despite exemptions on paper, that humanitarian goods, including medicines, were being impeded from getting into Iran. And so he called on him to do so. He's now been president for over a year. He has yet to do so himself. So at that time, of course, this is a point of criticism. Maximum pressure is a failure. Iran is expanding its nuclear program, and we are hurting innocent Iranian people in a pandemic, no less. And yet, under the Biden administration, while they are conducting negotiations, and right now we're in a place that seems like we're very close to hopefully restoring a non-proliferation deal, which everybody should welcome given the fear of nuclear war that we're currently in, those sanctions still were never lifted. They still have not been lifted. So this use of economic sanctions has been framed by US officials as an alternative to war, where in reality, the impact that it has on civilians is akin to war. And that is warfare. It's just warfare. It's just economic warfare.
Right. And also, I'm not an expert on this, but I feel like you always got to follow the money too. So the fact that Ukrainian refugees are, open arms, as we both agree they should be, Ukraine, it's in the business interest of the United States, the military-industrial complex, further hurting Putin. It's in our economic interests to do that. Whereas Afghanistan, this and that, I mean, we occupied Afghanistan. We squandered trillions of dollars, but there's no real economic interest for the United States in opening our arms to Afghanistan refugees. Same thing with Somalian refugees, Yemenis refugees. Besides the just straight up racism of it all, what about that financial component?
Well, when you bring up the financial component, I think something that's important is, so you said squandered trillions of dollars. And yes, from the perspective of ordinary Americans, that money was squandered because it wasn't used to help Americans. It didn't make us more secure. It didn't provide social services, social safety nets. And not only did it not provide any of those things for us, we lack those things across the board. I mean, like, people rarely are talking about in like our mainstream media, the fact that 40 million Americans live in poverty. That is not a small number. That is a huge number. That is a large proportion of the population of the richest country in the world living in poverty. People who don't have access to medicine and healthcare. All of these things are extremely important to talk about, and how that money was used. It was squandered from our point of view, but from the point of view of the arms industry and defense contractors, it was a boon, right? It was great. Afghanistan was great. It lined a lot of pockets for a lot of people, not for a lot of people, actually, for a small minority of people. And actually, it was, I believe it was the CEO of Raytheon a few weeks back, maybe less than a month ago, who was quoted as citing the escalation between the Houthis in the UAE, as well as the potential invasion of or like conflict between Ukraine and Russia, as, this is something that's for our investors or for our bottom line is a positive sign. So when you create an industry that is profitable only based on whether or not there's war and conflict, you're probably going to get war and conflict.
Right. And my final question to you, to me, who knows how this is going to end, but the bottom line is, you're also accused as a journalist or as a scholar, Middle East expert, you're accused of whatever, being pro-Russia or Russian talking points, if you just point out that promises were made to Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union for NATO not to move further eastward past reunified Germany. I mean, that's just a fact. And that was violated. That does not condone a full throttle invasion where so many people are needlessly dying. So Putin is obviously wrong to do that. And Russia is wrong to do that. But it just seems to me like there can be no nuanced discussion. The corporate media won't allow it. You never hear about NATO's expansion further east, the missiles that have been pointed at Russia. I mean, we know what happened when missiles were pointed at us, Russian missiles in Cuba. There was a momentary Cuban Missile Crisis. And if a few things went differently, you could have had all-out nuclear war. Your thoughts on it? Just seems like there's not a lot of discussion allowed, definitely in mainstream media, of why Russia feels a threat. Not that we should condone what they did, but that the United States has basically been the ringleader of breaking those NATO promises.
Yeah, well, the idea of having a nuanced discussion isn't to place blame on one side. It's to say, look, there is a problem, and typically when there's a problem, what we're trying to seek is a solution. But the only way to do that is to understand A, whoever your adversary is, and B, to look at the context. If you don't look at the historical context, if you don't actually listen to the grievances of the other side, then how do you hope to resolve a conflict? This is like basic psychology. Like, as an individual human being, if you have a conflict with another person and they're like, we're just not going to listen to anything you have to say, we're not going to listen to any reasons why we're here to begin with, but we're just going to try to solve this conflict, it's never going to happen. So it is, there's a reason why we call it media and not news, because we call every other country's media or news media, we call it, there's tags now on social media, Russian affiliated media, China state affiliated media. There's no such response in the US. For instance, VOA, Voice of America is paid by the State Department. The funding comes from the US government. It doesn't say anything about a US state affiliated media, because again, the assumption is that everything we do is truth, everything we do is right, and everything they do is wrong, and everything they do is propaganda. But in reality, if we're not even allowed to have these conversations, how is that short of propaganda? If we're not allowed to point out why we're in the situation that we're in, it's not to condone it. It's to say we have to understand it to resolve it. But if you're going to try and paint this sort of ridiculous ahistorical picture of we're the heroes and they're the bad guys, we're just going to be stuck in this cycle of conflict forever. And yeah, in the case of the US, the problem is we would feel the same way if there were, Russian troops and military bases and weapons on our borders. This is how we would feel exactly. And so to hold ourselves to a different standard, to create these double standards, is part of the reason we are in the current state of affairs. And that's why it's so vitally important to talk about that context.
Well, I should also point out, it's not like big tech here in America is ever going to say CNN or flag CNN or MSNBC or whatever, all these outlets as state media, because the big tech is in bed with the government, the U.S. government. And basically, the U.S. government relies on CNN, MSNBC, and all these platforms. You can add in the New York Times, Washington Post, to basically regurgitate as stenographers. Yeah, sometimes these outlets do investigations of the government, but I mean, that's sometimes, not often. So you have big tech ready to censor RT and these other places, but they'll never do it to media outlets here because of big tech's conflict of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're missing part of the story. And the idea that people want to hear the full story, again, is not acquiescence or condoning of what are clearly violations of international law. It's just that we can't talk about international law unless we're talking about everyone who's violating it. And international law is not meaningful unless everybody is held to the same standards and account.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Assal Rad. Everybody, I just put her Twitter in the super chat. She's blowing up with retweets. So definitely go follow Assal. You were with the National Iranian American Council. And I'll definitely keep in touch with you because obviously the media is doing, a play-by-play of what's going on in war, which is obviously very important. But they're not really talking about this much. Probably
not analyzing it.
Yeah,
right?
They're not
analysis. There's just here's stuff that's going on and make sure to take a side, or then you're with them.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the work you do as well. Have a great weekend.
Same to you. And thank you for having me.
Sure. So that was Assal Rad with the National Iranian American Council. Really wanted to have her on because honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I had a pre-planned vacation. I kind of felt guilty that I was on vacation as all this is going on, but obviously I wasn't going to eat the money for the vacation. But I was just lying by the pool watching those two clips that we played, and I was just disgusted, especially by the one that was talking about blonde hair and blue eyes. Like, come on. You might as well just say Aryan lives matter at that point. Aryan lives matter. So thank you to Assal. Before I bring on our next guest, and we're going to continue this topic specifically on basically Black refugees that have been stopped at the Ukrainian border from going into Poland and elsewhere. So that's really important too. Before we get to that, I want you to smash that like button. We got 220 people watching. Let's get that up. It's Friday. Share this live stream. Smash the like button. Super chats are welcome. I'll read them towards the end. Really appreciate your super chats. And remember, folks, I'm back from vacation. I'm a little well rested. I want to get back on the road. I need every single person watching, or everybody that can, that's not already a Status Coup member, sign up as a Status Coup member. StatusCoup.com/join. Join us for $5 to $10 a month. $5 to $10 a month to support our investigative reporting as well as our on-the-ground reporting. Today, I started looking into a couple trips that we want to take. Well, I shouldn't say a couple, but at least the next on-the-ground reporting trip that we want to take. So I don't have anything to announce yet, but it costs money, buddy. Costs money, honey. So smash that like button and support us. StatusCoup.com/join. Without further ado, let me reintroduce Marquis Green. How you doing, Marquis?
Great. And how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I pronounced your name right?
Yes, you did. And I appreciate that very much.
Okay. I'm always getting people's names wrong. So Marquis is with Paradigm Shift. He's got his own channel here on YouTube, Twitch. I met him in Buffalo as I was covering India Walton's election. And I've been trying to get you back on. And I thought this topic was good. And it just so happens, it's funny. I texted you, do you want to come on this topic? And you were like, I literally was talking about.
Spent 4 hours talking about this. Yeah. And so for me personally, I both care about the Ukraine situation. And at the same time, like, I'm very disconnected from it because there's not physically a lot that I can do. And as much as my foreign policy, I took it in college, I'm adept in understanding how we got here, but like, I physically don't have the brain capacity to like know everything. So yeah. I've been trying to stay away from it as you can tell, but it looks like I'm going to have to open my mouth eventually. So here we are.
Yeah. And I always say to my audience, like, I don't want to bullshit people. This is not my wheelhouse. I'm not a foreign policy expert. I try to have on guests that know more than me. I'm going to try to cover this as best as I can. You also have to put out information. When you put out information, this is a war. There's propaganda being put out there by both sides. So you got to take everything to one extent. I mean, it's not propaganda. Russia has invaded Ukraine. It's a war. It is. Russia has declared war. That part we know.
Literally, yeah.
the play-by-play, it's very difficult because I was talking to someone who was on the ground there. Even being on the ground there, it's hard to decipher all the time what's propaganda and what's not because there's so much propaganda going out there, both for the Russians and the Ukrainians. But one thing that we know, and let me just read, Colin, if you have the article, hold on. If you have the article, UN admits refugees have faced racism at the Ukrainian border. So this is from The Independent. I'll read some of it. The United Nations has admitted that some non-European refugees have faced discrimination while trying to flee to safety at Ukraine borders after their experiences were dismissed as lies and, quote, Russian disinformation by online commentators. Filippo Grandi, the organization's High Commissioner for Refugees. Of course, I hit a paywall here, so I can't read the rest. Oh, wait, can I? Wait, I think I got it. Hold on. Filippo Grandi, the organization's High Commissioner for Refugees, acknowledged their plight during a press conference on Tuesday afternoon. Quote, you have seen reports in the media that there are different treatments with Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians. Now our observations, and we possibly cannot observe every single post yet, but our observations is that these are not state policies, but there are instances which it has happened. Okay. It's not state policies, but it just so happens to be happening at the border of Ukraine. Okay. There has been a different treatment. There should be absolutely no discrimination between Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians, Europeans and non-Europeans. Everyone is fleeing from the same risks. The UN plans to intervene to try to ensure that everybody receives equal treatment. So that's the UN. They say a lot of things, and usually there's not much follow-up. Now I want to get to this BuzzFeed article that actually has more examples. African students said they're facing racism on trains and buses while trying to flee Ukraine. Foreign students trying to reach the Ukrainian border said they were thrown off trains, not allowed on buses, and made to wait hours in the cold before crossing over. I'll read some of this. Many African students who studied in Ukraine said they're facing racial discrimination during their terrifying journeys fleeing Russia's attacks, often struggling to find a way out of the country. BuzzFeed News heard from 2 Nigerian students who said they were subjected to racial slurs on a train and were violently thrown off it by Ukraine police officers who pulled a gun on them. A student from Sierra Leone said that she and her companions were not allowed to board a train headed to the border despite having tickets. And a student from Liberia said she was forced to spend 2 days in the cold without food and shelter at the Ukrainian border after guards refused to let her and other people of color board buses taking refugees across to Poland. So my first question, it's not a secret that Europe has a long history of racism, just like right here in the United Corporations of America. Talk to me about your response to these reports happening at the border.
I'm not even gonna like have fun with it in the realm. Is that me?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's me.
Okay, no, I want to make sure my notifications weren't going nuts.
That was me.
All good. Love spur of the moment things. We'll do it live. This reminds me first to introduce myself to people and what I'm going to be basing my actual opinion off of. There was an instance where people were seeking refuge in China and Black people weren't being allowed to do that there. They were facing massive points of discrimination in China all across. When we talk about the Uyghur Muslims, when we talk about the South African apartheid, when we talk about every section of history seems to do this thing where they want to disallow the advent of the idea of racism still existing even in war-torn states. For me personally, when I read these things, I was surprised, but I wasn't too surprised because I know that this is a rampant thought that isn't explored too much in European nations because you gotta remember the history of Europe. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna sit here and backtrack us through it. But when it comes to hearing these stories, I'm more allowed to take it at face value because that's what happens. Whenever it's a refugee situation, and I know a lot of people have made these comparisons already, and they're way smarter than me, so I'm just going off of them. We have this situation where every time we go and look for refugees, or every time we try to say we should help them, there gets this comparison as to who should get help. Like there are people coming into this border right now, currently from the Ukraine, and they're people of different ethnicities, different colors, and people are pocket watching them. Like, oh, these refugees, these immigrants are coming in, and you got the nicest sneakers on. You don't look like you're poor. You don't look like you should be running from anything. You look like you make a lot of money. There's always this layer of racism that's laid on top of any war-torn or struggling nation. And right now we're witnessing this identity crisis for Ukrainians and more importantly Europeans, because now they're facing, and I hate to say it this way because it makes me sound like a jerk, but it's true. And as you just covered in your last with your last guest, now we've got these people saying, I can't believe this is happening to people with blonde hair and blue eyes. And it's like, I hate that it's gonna take the loss of people that go ahead.
Let me play that one more time if people didn't see. So
yeah, please, because
what he's referring to is a Ukrainian, I think it was like a top legal official for Ukraine, very upset about Aryan people being.
Sorry, it's very emotional.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles and his helicopters.
Well, first of all, maybe he should know that his president is a Jew. So when you're basically low key, I'm very concerned about Aryans being attacked. By the way, we should blue eyes, blonde hair, brown hair, black eye. I mean, everybody should be concerned, but it's just interesting that he said that when his president's Jewish.
And it's great. So my catchphrase for anybody who doesn't know me, or the funny thing that I try to say is, if all lives matter, then X, Y, or Z. And this is another situation where I'm going to say it. If all lives matter, then why are you being now reveled at this? And the quiet part is out loud. And I feel like we're entering a stage where we're now seeing that even in places where we kind of not just don't think about often, but in places where we understand what's going on, but we kind of just put it to the wayside, even there in places where they don't have to worry about systemic issues like we do in this country, and I mean Black people in this country, even in those places where you think those issues would be either non-existent or a back burner focus issue that could be solved with, a little bit of remedy, it's the prevailing theory, it's the prevailing method, it's the prevailing way in which the society thinks. The fact that we're even worrying about the color of people's skin while people are getting bombed shows you, well, why aren't we so why aren't we showing this amount of care or concern towards I still don't even know, and this is honestly like a sad part of my intellectual, I guess, pathway, but I still don't know what happened to the Uyghur Muslims. Have they been released from those camps? Can we, we're talking, there's so many issues. I'm sorry, there's just so many issues that this leads to that it makes me think, yeah, of course you wouldn't want Black people to get out of the country. You want fodder. You want to get your citizens out safely. You like to view people as a hierarchy. And when war happens, that should, and I hate the idea of, I'm anti-war, of course. But I hate this idea that even when you're witnessing fighter jets literally dropping bombs, you're getting drone striked and everything, skin color still matters. Shouldn't it be to just evacuate everyone, but then we're going to have a problem of where are they going? Is it racist where they're going? Will they be allowed? It's we don't have a humanitarian response to anything anymore. We judge people based on their immutable characteristics. We as people claim that we would never do that, but large governments do that. And large governments push that propaganda down to their people. And some of us in America, very America-centric people, will say, that doesn't matter. They know better than that. We're in 2022. That should change by now. But look at the reports of what you're seeing. It's something where I can't explain to you why it's happening. I have to explain to you that it's just bad that it's happening. And I hate the other side of that, which you just mentioned, and that's the last point I'll address, is that it's not a state-sanctioned thing. It's just the people doing that. In a time where every human body is a resource, every person, every hand on deck that you can get, cooks, doctors, medicine people, you don't know who these people are. Nope. You're not worth it. Get off the train. Ukrainians first. But I'm Ukrainian. Oh, my skin color don't match your perception of what Ukrainians are. But if all lives matter,
right.
Then that would be my take.
I also want to read this, Colin, if you could pull up the CNN article. International coalition files United Nations appeal over reports of racism at the border of Ukraine. An international coalition of activists and human rights attorneys on Wednesday announced they filed an appeal to the United Nations on behalf of African refugees facing racial discrimination in Ukraine and Poland. The filing follows numerous reports from Black refugees who said they faced segregation, racism, and abuse as they tried to flee for safety from war-torn Ukraine to Poland. Coalition members said during a news conference on Wednesday that they've heard reports of segregated lines for white and Black people at the Polish border, and Black mothers and children have been thrown off trains. Videos shared on social media have shown groups of Black people stranded at the border, not being allowed in, and various threats against Black people. So let's put aside the just evil of this for a second, which is hard to do. There's a lot, the word war crimes is being used against Russia, I believe rightly so. Well, if you're not letting people through a border that are trying to flee to safety because they're Black or brown or, not Aryan, well, if they're not allowed through and harm is done to them because you are depriving them of safe entry, is that not a war crime against those people?
That's not the way they think about it. And that's the funniest part, is that the logistics of it are America, and I keep going back to America because I'm American and I'm not going to pretend like I am able to directly empathize with the plight of a foreign country because I did never live there. I don't speak the language. I don't know the culture. And I'm not going to imbue the tones of how they should handle it. But on a logistical standpoint, that means you had that planned already. You had that planned already, and you're working towards just like in the tornado that hit that Amazon factory and they wouldn't let them leave. You view these people as less than, which means that you've always viewed these people as less than, because now your country's under attack and the first thing you're saying is, we're not letting the Black people go through. And most people would say, well, maybe there's a an entire reason behind it. Maybe there's some issue with the trains, and maybe they're trying to get the maximum amount of people out at the same time. It shouldn't matter at this point. It shouldn't matter at this point. And now you're having these people who are saying, well, this isn't happening. There's no end. You can see it with your own eyes. The question that we have to ask is, we cannot validate the invasion of Ukraine by Russia in any way, shape, or form. This was straight up a move. This is like a chess piece was moved and everybody thought it wasn't going to happen. Then it happened. Now we have to ask ourselves, at these two warring states, these two warring nations, what happens to the innocent people who get caught in the crossfire? Can we logistically figure out a way to solve or minimize the amount of human casualties, and then the racism plays a part in it, and then the prejudice plays a part in it? And again, as was just mentioned, it's not a state-sponsored thing. So is Ukraine, that's a great question, is Ukraine at fault for letting their citizens literally decide who stays and who goes, and therefore who probably lives and who dies? And this further fuels the confusion that I see people having about even being, and please don't ever be this, pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian. Like, I get that, oh, they're doing bad stuff too. But that's part of the issue, is that even when there is a clear aggressor, you're still being a bad person. My empathy towards the situation drops, because it's like, wow, even when the whole nation is doing skits and memorials and sing-alongs and fundraising and this and that, my people are still at the bottom of the list. No matter where you move in this country, no matter where you go, no matter where you go on this globe, somehow, some way, it's the black person's fault. And I'm like, I thought Putin was the bad guy. I thought he said he was denazifying Ukraine, but like Ukraine pulling the Nazi stuff on the black people. It's too many layers. And I'm so angry about it. But at the same time, it's like, no, well, of course they were at this position in time.
There's also another element. Well, I mean, look at our media. Look at the people that are reporting those two clips I played. How many primetime anchors that are black exist? How many black reporters are over in Ukraine? You think Anderson Cooper, who's out there?
I didn't even know he was there until yesterday, and I was like, what is he doing in Ukraine? Like,
you think Anderson Cooper is going to prioritize or even think it's to cover this?
Zero coverage has zero.
Yeah, coverage. I'm not saying Anderson Cooper is like a straight up racist segregationist.
Right? No,
but
yeah.
Everybody, all these anchors, they have no connection to. Like, I, for example, have made a point in my career. Basically, the top story I've covered happens to be the Flint water crisis and the Flint water cover-up. It has lost me money, not made Status Coup money, because it's not a trending topic. YouTube doesn't promote it. The mainstream media won't cover it, even though I cover it. And it is not just Flint is majority black, but there's a lot of poor white people there too. It is a humanitarian crime, and racism was behind it. But part of why I feel that I'm one of the only ones covering it, I happen to just have a predisposition
to care.
Like,
say it straight.
Particularly if there's a racial component. But I can't tell you how many times I had the goods and I had documents from the criminal investigation, proof of a cover-up. I would go to NBC News, Washington Post, the New York Times, all these people. They didn't say straight up, yeah, we don't care because it's majority black.
They hit you with the don't look up.
Right. It was kind of underneath it. Yeah, we don't really think this would, for the amount of resources that would go into it, that this would generate generate interest, rating, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's basically the same fucking thing, just a different humanitarian crisis. They don't want to cover it, because they're mostly white and privileged and wealthy, and they don't really have a visceral connection to the black and brown people being discriminated against. But the other thing is they want to show the fire, the brimstone, the shelling, not the suffering of black people, because they think that would turn off half their audience.
Which is funny, because when it kind of was the first time we talked. We brought up like the media coverage of the Black Lives Matter protests and how even the left-leaning news was trying to say, oh, it's all peaceful, and then they're showing the burning buildings and people running around. Like, even then, you were trying to like help us, but even you wanted the ratings, and we noticed that. Like, and I wasn't a big purveyor of, because the term mainstream media has been thrown in so many different directions, but especially when it comes to right wingers, and like the mainstream media will never cover this, but like they don't. And my problem is that I feel like if you're trying to really create a story or create a narrative, I hate that word too because it gets spun in different directions, but of suffering and pain that the Ukrainians are facing right now, you should also throw in, hey, we should take a look at the fact that even inside of their own diaspora, they're still treating people with inhumane disrespect. They're still treating people the way that we wouldn't want to be treated. Maybe we can learn a lesson from that. Maybe we can say at the same time, this shouldn't be happening to Ukraine, but Ukrainians shouldn't be pushing this ideology or actually physically going out and being like, no, you can't go. We can talk about multiple things at once, but there seems to be the problem with the mainstream media or media in general is that they don't want to have that attention span split because, again, as you said, it's ratings, it's numbers, and it's like these are human lives. I'm for ending this. I'm for a diplomatic solution. I'm for like ending all conflict. But at the same time, we have to have some type of not meeting or congregation, but we have to have some type of conversation around what exactly is our position, our takeaways from what we're seeing happening as somebody's being pressed during war times. Because once this is over, are we just going to forget that the Ukrainians did that? Are we going to forget that there are other people inside of different countries that move there and might face that same discrimination? Oh, we've got a rampant problem that underlies all things. And God forbid, if anything escalates past that, now we know who's cannon fodder. And that's a conversation that we could have that could stop us from eventually hitting another wall where it's like, okay, now we're all going to war. Who's the first people we're sending? All the rich people. Yeah, I was talking about, I hate the fact that I'm seeing blonde eyes and blonde hair and blue eyes getting shelled down. Those are the people going to war now, because when it came time to it, you didn't even want us to survive. And then you want us to go fight the war that you was literally kicking us out of a couple seconds ago? Nah, see? Conversations that we could build from. Now, I'm not saying that we should just completely ignore the crisis. I'm not saying that we shouldn't help. Obviously, that's not my position, and I hope nobody takes that away from here. But I have to have it in the back of my head that I am facilitating a conversation about a group of people who, given certain circumstances, wouldn't give that same consideration towards me. And when it comes to the mainstream media, what we end up with is this double standard. We have everybody literally shelling out thousands of dollars, fundraisers, all this for the Ukrainians. What happened to what happened to the apartheids? What happened when we... Sorry, give me 1 second to just turn that off. That's my phone.
Okay. Smash the like button. Smash the like button while we get Marquis back. Share this live stream. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. We welcome more. Double K, $49.99. Holy cow. Thank you, Double K. Really appreciate that. Very generous of you. Dave L, $5. Welcome back, Jordan. Thank you very much. Want to shout out new Status Coup member just signed up. Charlotte just signed up. So we are really pushing membership right now. You can become a member for as low as $5 a month. We have other plans for $10 a month, $20 a month. We're going to be doing our members only Zoom call next week or the week after. So that's always exciting for Status Coup members. We do a Zoom call with our members, questions, comments, answers, all that stuff. So please consider signing up. And by the way, as I said earlier, right now I'm plotting out my next reporting trip on the ground somewhere, which obviously costs a lot of money to do on the ground reporting, the travel, food, hotels, rent-a-car, flights. So that's what your membership goes to also, investigative reporting and on the ground reporting. All right, we got you back.
Yes.
So I also wanted to bring up the point, how do I put this? How do I phrase this in a way? But, it seems to, I'm obviously not a black person, but it's got to be hard. Not that a black person wouldn't care about the plight of Ukrainian refugees, but when you see the complete tale of two refugees, Afghanistan refugees, by the way, Yemenis refugees, where the United States is still actively causing or aiding the Yemenis genocide and famine and these things. The U.S. is still aiding Saudi Arabia in that. It's got to be hard to balance those two things, because you're a human, so you feel for the Ukrainian people, but at the same time, you see the different treatment towards black and brown people.
And we're still an imperialist nation. Like, oh my God, it's the, you know what it is? You know what it is? I'm gonna make a big like policy / government / I guess old world order type of judgment here. It's funny that we exist within this, okay, I'm gonna say the word, paradigm of thought where I know that our resources go to the exact thing that other people are doing that we condemn. My problem is that we seem to never get an understanding of just how interconnected each of our societies are. I feel like we really started doing a thing, especially around the time of the pandemic. We really started doing a thing where it's only happening here, here, and here, and nowhere else. There's no way on earth that we're having the same problems in Boise, Idaho that we're having in I was trying to pick a very, very far off place, but there's no way the same problems in Boise, Idaho are happening in the Ukraine right now. There's no way. But when you start to realize that the world is a lot bigger than you, and especially during the rise of the internet, and more importantly, during 2020, 2021, when we're all inside just ingesting information, it can make it feel like the world is a lot larger than you thought. So your empathy has to be split in so many directions that it can cause the fatigue of you not being able to care about it. Just as I, want to say, like, I really care about the Ukrainians, but like once this ends, I'm not moving anywhere in the totem pole for no matter how much empathy I give to any side on any part of the conflict. Yes, Russian soldiers that are moving in are not probably. They are young kids who were just told to just go there, and like some of them don't even want to be there. Like, but you're still there. You're still doing the thing. So when it comes to trying to solve the reasons why you might feel that way or take these actions towards black and brown people, the people that just don't look like you, what ends up happening is that we get into this mix of not being able to understand how to solve that issue permanently. We always come up with these temporary Band-Aid fixes for any racial issue because it's up to the people to actually stop being that way. And what I'm starting to hate more often than not, and I really do mean hate, is that people still have an edge to them where they think they're better than other people, even in the moments where there's literally inequality between us. We're all like suffering under war. The Russian people are suffering under the sanctions. Like there could be and I understand that the world doesn't work like this, but there should just be a coalition of, we both don't want this. There's one guy that want it. Like we could really defect off this guy and just be like, all right, we invaded Ukraine, but like we're just chilling for the meantime. If I don't see enough energy or if I don't see enough of a movement towards where or how I'm supposed to feel in a way that makes me feel empathetic, like, yeah, that's the right move. That's a great thing. Yes, let's do it for the people that are getting hurt and harmed. Let's find out a way to like subvert this so we could do what the big guy says, but we don't, cause too many casualties down. I don't see empathy in a war sense. And that means that pretty much any military is under the control of any dude who's just like, yeah, fuck those guys. I hate them. Like, it's whatever, I want that country and you're going to help me get it. Okay, so now what? Now I have to feel as empathetic or as low on the totem pole as anybody else, especially that the interview that we just watched at the beginning of this. Now I got to feel for those blonde-haired, blue-eyed people the same way I got to feel for my black and brown brothers and sisters. And then when we're all in the same melting pot, the world don't care unless you white. And now we got a problem where, okay, well, if that's going to be the prevailing thought for the next 30 years, maybe we need to change something about who's in charge, who's in leadership, and how we handle diplomacy across the world. Because if we're going to solve let's say, the Israel-Palestine conflict, and then we're going to solve the Russia-Ukraine conflict, then we're going to solve the China-Uyghur Muslim conflict, and then we're going to solve apartheid in South Africa, and then we're going to solve the issues of systemic racism in America, and then we're going to solve the conflict between South American nations. I don't even want to say nations, I want to say countries. And then we're going to solve like the rampant Nazi problem in Canada. It's across the globe. There's got to be something that people are not seeing as far as the evolution of laws and justice that purports this idea in people's heads that this is the action that they should be taking. And I feel like we're not going to get to that point. We're not going to get to an understanding that is level, low, and down enough for everybody to say, yeah, we're not supporting this anymore. The machine's just going to keep going. The machine's just, we're just cogs on the wheel. And I feel like everybody's realizing that. And that's what's causing this debate over whether or not Ukraine or Russia is in the right, and whether or not, you know, the Ukrainians should be doing this and the Russians should be doing that, because we're all starting to realize, oh shit, this is really out of our hands. So what we have to discuss, at least internally, is how can we better the system so next time this happens, we can all have a ready to go, ready, set response that makes us help them out from less of a standpoint of let's just get them out, and more to how about we stabilize relations between people so you can stand as one, which is a problem that we've had in America since its inception, which is a problem we've had across the globe since its inception. I feel like only like a couple of people got it right. Even Switzerland's not neutral anymore, so I don't know what's going on.
Let me ask you last question on this. I want to pivot to a different topic, but you know, I'm not trying to ask you this as, oh, let me find a black person to come on to ask this, but I think it's important to speak with black people about this, because to me, it's got to be really infuriating when you keep hearing the United States talking about human rights and war crimes, when we've seen what the United States, their concern for human rights of Breonna Taylor, Amir Locke, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Jordan Davis, Walter Gray. I could go on and on and on. We've seen the crocodile tears of Obama, Biden, the solemn statements, but you know, this is the legal system, this and that. We've seen the Democratic Party water down the police reform bill. Reform in air quotes.
Reform, as if like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you know that now you hit my specialties. We ain't even defund the police. We funded the police. Like,
so my point is, the United States and the media, solemn, you know, human rights abuses and war crimes, and absolutely Russia is committing human rights violations and all this, but the U.S. is committing human rights violations towards black people every goddamn day. And the Democratic Party, I mean, we know the Republicans don't give a damn about black people, but the Democratic Party, you know, kneels with their kente cloth and, you know, puts out whatever woke language. But in actual practice, they don't care about human rights for black people, brown people, Hispanic people here. So it just seems kind of, as a white person, it seems hollow. It must be incredible. It must be incredibly. Yeah. How does that make you feel?
Like, I saw it coming. I can't make this any clearer. When we do this thing in America, and this is going to make me sound like I hate America, which, you know, for all intents and purposes, technically I have to, because, you know, duh. But that's my joke for the day. What stuns me the most is that we can condemn and claim ourselves to be the world's superpower, the world's hero. When it's time for the world to need saving, America will be there to rescue you from the bottomless pits of hell, and we will drag you up with all of our strength and might and raise you to become a brand new person full of ideals, hopes, and dreams. And it's like, we couldn't even get COVID right. We have disparities in our society that are split so hard between every single layer of society that it is astonishing to me that we can go and look at other countries and be like, or we can go to other countries, or we look at other countries, and a lot of people will say, you should be happy to live here. It's a lot better than it would be over there. And then we do nothing to improve the lives of the people that are here completely. And again, it's the revolving door argument of, oh my God, I can't believe you have the power to do something, but you'd rather spend your time and your money funding war, like funding the military industrial complex, to go then into another country and try to declare democracy. How about you fix take for 1 day, 1 year, just give me 1 year. 1 year of you not funding the 780 billion or how much it's ever going to of the military industrial complex, a part of that bill, take all that money and just solve all the issues in America. Then we can go around to other countries and claim you're doing human rights abuses here, because you're seeing people get slaughtered by cops, the occupying force of America. And there's a lot of people who say that doesn't happen. It's like it's happening to everybody. But for some reason, it seems like it's a black only issue, because that's the way you want it to be. Because if it affected you, it would be a problem. But didn't we just talk about how the Ukrainians are blonde hair and blue eyes, and people are astonished that it's happening to them? So how are you a government body? Joe Biden, come on, man. How are you a government body? And you won't do it anyway. It must be. It's gotta be. There's gotta be a similar thread between all of these stories, and it doesn't matter unless it happens to white people. And this move to condemn Ukraine, to condemn Russia, my bad, apologize for that, to condemn Russia, to say that there's human rights abuses, to say this, that, and the other, please look in your own backyard. Please, I'm begging you. Because now it's going to get to a point where I'm going to have to do the whataboutisms. Oh, right. That's really bad that that's happening there. But what about like all the other things that we clearly saw on videotape that you guys were outraged about enough that you wanted to, as you just said, kneel with the Kunta Kinte clause. Black Lives Matter. They should be in the streets. You got the legislative power. You could at least make it so people can't do these things outright. And then we could talk about fixing it on a societal level. We don't even do that. We got... Right. What did we get? I think it was we got $3,200 from the government, and now the pandemic's over. Like, come on, help, please, anything, begging you.
You're lucky not everybody got $3,200.
I was gonna say, not everybody even got that money. Like, there's a whole level of problems.
Hard pivot to one more topic. Sorry, I didn't tell you I wanted to cover this, but this is something near and dear to me. So while I was on a mini vacation, the only officer that was charged in the Breonna Taylor murder, and he wasn't even charged directly for murdering her, but just for bullets that went into her neighbor's apartment. Brett Hankison of Louisville PD was acquitted of endangering Breonna Taylor's neighbors in the raid. Hankison, the only officer who was charged, fired 10 bullets into Miss Taylor's apartment. 3 pierced the wall and flew into another apartment where families slept. So this is it. The first outrage is that he wasn't even charged directly for Breonna Taylor's murder. He was charged for stray bullets that went into other apartments. But shocker, he was acquitted. Before I get your response, I just want to play a short clip from my interview in Louisville last summer with Breonna Taylor's aunts. Please. So the Louisville Police Department said there was no body cameras, but your lawyer is finding that they might have had as many as 30 body cameras there, and that were on?
That were on, and then the body cameras are after the fact, though, after everything had taken place. Like the original, when they came there, they are from that. They're from that night. They're from, from when they raided the house, and they're from at Breonna's place. I don't think it's when they raided the house, though.
I mean, whether it's during or after, it's still.
They're still there. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we was told that there was nothing. And the evidence that he got, is blurred out. Some has been deleted. Some has been, you know what I'm saying, like tampered with, per se. Some of the voices, some you can't see some, but you can sure hear the conversations that went on. So
we just went from corrupt to just mind-blowingly illegal. You're not allowed to delete body cam footage or edit it or anything like that.
It's disgusting, and we outraged. Like I get angry just like thinking about it and talking about it. Just that fire, that angry is it's mind blowing that my niece lost her life for some machine. Yeah, so this shit could have been avoided.
Them to interview her or to, do you know Jamarcus Glover type situation, if that was it.
I think what's really insult to injury, you briefly mentioned it. Well, the mayor's office fiercely denied that this had anything to do with trying to seize Jamarcus Glover's house. But on Breonna Taylor's birthday, the city buys the house for $1. I think they flipped it or something to somebody. So it does seem that the city had an interest in that house. So there's multiple levels here between just straight up cover up, but also the motivations behind tying a black nurse to Jamarcus Glover. So the reason I played that, and that I interviewed Breonna Taylor's aunts while I was in Louisville covering the story. So it's up on the channel if you want to watch the whole interview. The reason I covered that, played that, is not only has no officer been charged, well, one officer was charged, but not for the murder of Breonna Taylor. Not only did the Kentucky Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, lie about the grand jury process, but you have a massive police cover-up that has just been accepted. And I was in Louisville. They did some woke shit. They put up some signs. They called it Breeway, Breonna Taylor Street Breeway. But you have not an officer has been charged. Not an officer has been convicted. Only one officer was even charged. He just got off. He wasn't even charged with murdering her. It kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. You want to talk about human rights? Where is the Department of Justice? By the way, part of my interview with them was the FBI was supposedly investigating this. What happened with that? Just like the Department of Justice under Obama was investigating Eric Garner and civil rights, possible civil rights violations. That never went anywhere. And Trump's DOJ squashed it. It's just unbelievable to me. You have a blatant police cover-up. You have the Attorney General of the state who has it's not even up for debate. He lied about the grand jury because grand jury members came out saying he's lying about what we decided, and he didn't even give us the option of charging XYZ. Your thoughts just on it's just beyond corrupt and unjust.
And okay, this is where I'm going to go into my full theoretical, philosophical mode. You know what's happening. There's no denying it. I think what is happening is that it's the shock of just how like blatant these people move. And again, this comes from a time where I have to say, before the internet, we weren't sharing these videos that quick and fast. You know, it took time for the Rodney King case had to happen on live television. Thank God there was the helicopter going by. Like, we live in an era where these people are still trying to move under old methods, trying to use old methods to execute old tactics, and we're hip to it now. We know the deal. The fact that we're still arguing, like George Zimmerman, it still starts with George Zimmerman and Eric Gardner. You watch them kill people, not necessarily George Zimmerman, but like you watch them kill people, and you know that they did it. And for some reason, we have a legal system in which it absolves certain people of certain actions based on their job description. I would love to work for Twitch and then, well, okay, let me not say that because that might get taken out of context. But I would love to work for Twitch and get away with something like I don't know, like stealing a car or something, and just say, well, you know, I was a Twitch streamer, I was doing it for content. Like, I don't understand how we end up in a world where a doctor can be charged for medical malpractice that might injure somebody, but somebody physically holding up a gun and shooting you when you are unarmed is just thought of as, you know, it's another day, another dollar. Human rights abuses in America have always existed, and I feel like now we're at a point where we're trying to figure out why the people in charge are allowing it to happen as opposed to stopping or even solving some of the societal issues that might lead a person of color to have a run-in with the police. We're not fixing over-policing. We're not fixing the old remnants of broken windows policing. We're not fixing the old remnants of stop and frisk. We're not fixing the societal effort to like actually put communities back together. We're just holding them there by the teetering of their little, you know, threads until they break, and then we blame the people themselves for it. And I never understood how we know that there were no drugs in Breonna Taylor's house. We know that a person woke up to the sound of the battering ram coming into their door. So of course yo, what's up? Yo, what's going on? Like, you know, in that situation, you would act the same way. Why would we have the legal system set up to allow people to get away with that type of thing, knowing full well that's what we've been asking for out of a situation our entire lives? The right to be able to defend ourselves. All these two-way gun nuts all shut up about this. The layers, the NRA, the judicial system, the prosecutors, the judges. You have to take a look at it from the inside out and realize that the game, for some reason, is just rigged by people's choices. We always love to say systemic racism is something that can be decodified within law, which is true to an extent. But you got to look at it from a bigger stage. I really have to view the system. And when I say the system, I mean the people that work in the courthouses, the people that work on the police force, the people that work in law enforcement, the people that work in medicine. I have to look at all of these avenues and say, you have legally killed Black people without any accountability. And you're just still out there practicing medicine. You're still out there being a cop. Oh, they moved him to desk duty. He shot somebody. He got PTSD. At least I would hope. Like, maybe he shouldn't be in that position anymore. Maybe she should. Let me not make this a he thing. Maybe they shouldn't be in that position anymore. For some reason, we don't have any solutions to these issues. We just let the ball keep rolling. So if the ball keeps rolling, especially in the United States, I'm going to have to say, well, I'm sorry, I can't care about the Ukrainians because, like, once I do, they still coming after me.
Well, I got to tell you, Marquise, I'm careful what I say because I'm just a white dude. And
it's all good.
A white dude, every white person has some form of privilege, some more than others. But I got to tell you, as a journalist, I have felt this way for years. I'm sorry to say, but not much is going to change if we just keep protesting, circling around the same blocks, chanting the same shit. I can't tell you how many Black Lives Matter protests, Indigenous protests, you name it, that I've covered, and I'll continue covering them, that I left feeling like this is just kind of that same old record spinning. We're just doing the same thing, expecting different results. It's not for me to tell Black people how to lead their movements.
Right? No. A matter of fact, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to cut you off because I want to save you the trouble. I appreciate that viewpoint. I think when we talked the first time, especially the last time, I always said you're one of those people that I feel doesn't put their foot in their mouths or step into an area or a situation that they feel or generally should feel like they don't belong in. And I appreciate that from you. I would say I agree with you on that front. There needs to be
I think there needs to be an economic part of these protests.
Yeah. Like, oh my God. So, okay. Small segue, but small segue to make a point about a point. But the Canadian protests, the truckers, they have economic value. They have a thing that they can hold over the government that forces them not to be able to take certain steps with them. Oh my God, I don't want to risk the cargo. They're causing billions of dollars of damage every just the same way Black Lives Matter was. But it's their economic weight. They hold the keys. You need the truckers. Now what we're saying is when we start equating these protests, so Black people need capital in order for you to listen to us. But you drain the capital out of our neighborhoods. What do we have to bargain with? Our lives. So when we tell you there's a problem, maybe you should listen. But look, here we are again, caring about people with blonde hair and blue eyes, and yet again ignoring all the other things that happen. If we can address this and say this is a problem, we can address other things and say that they're a problem at the same time. And maybe if we started creating a movement where we were, and I know we did, Black Lives Matter is that movement, but if we were able to create an economic movement along with a social movement, that seems to be the only way that these bureaucrats are going to listen to us, these oligarchs are going to listen to us, because the only other option that I can see is a complete, and when we say blue wave, I mean, let's just find 50 candidates, let's find 50, 100, 200 candidates across the entire country who are just going to move the country in a forward progression way. Let's work on a large campaign. They can't stop us all. We need to work on larger scale effectiveness because they are able to snuff out protests very easily with the occupying force known as the police and the inactivity of the certain party who claims to care about us, the Democratic Party. We got to hit them where it hurts, and sadly, that's their pockets. And I feel like with the Russia-Ukraine situation, they're finally feeling it. So hopefully, maybe we can use that as a weapon against them. But we'll see. Time will tell.
The last thing I'll say on it, and again, I'm just speaking as a journalist because I've covered a lot of these protests, and you just leave being like, I'm going to be just covering the same shit year after year if there's not an additional component added. And I always use the George Floyd protests. we have seen that mass mobilization across races, across age, across age group, sexual orientation. We have seen mass mobilization is possible in this country on behalf of racial injustice. Imagine if the millions of people that came out, even if 5 to 10% of those people who came out for George Floyd protests took economic actions, whether it be boycotting corporate banking, Amazon, Walmart, we could go down the list. Oh, you might be seeing actual reform quick, because the capitalist class that has bought the government, they don't want their stock prices going down. They don't want their quarterly performance going down. Amazon doesn't want even an iota. So if not just black people, but if they're white allies, if the people that are part of Black Lives Matter protests, we could throw in indigenous protests against these pipelines, this and that. If the economic component is added, hell, block some bridges. And yes, there will be ripple down effects. There will be some working class people that are hurt by these things. But at the end of the day, sometimes you got to do a little hurt of working class people for a bigger purpose. So to me, I just wish to go along with the Breonna Taylor protests, all these protests that I've constantly covered and I'll continue covering, that there could be some organized component for an economic component. And it's not easy. I don't want to bullshit people. Yeah, we'll have a general strike tomorrow if enough people try. If enough people get together. No, you probably won't have a general strike tomorrow. And I already covered, I did not support what the truckers or whoever the fuck was protesting in Canada. I don't support their cause, but I thought that the freezing of bank accounts, those draconian things, is a dangerous precedent that could be used against exactly what I'm talking about right now. General strike protesters, people protesting banks, people blocking roads, this and that. Because if a general strike actually economically damaged U.S. businesses, this and that, why can't they just say the same thing? We're economic terrorists and freeze our bank accounts and threaten us with 10 to 20 years in jail and $100,000 fines. I'm going all over the place, but
no, you're making sense. No, you're making sense.
Your final thoughts, because to me, whether it be Black Lives Matter or other groups, I'm not saying don't protest, because it is important. Feet on the ground, raising awareness, this and that, but they'll let you protest. They will let you protest and chant your chants and this and that. They will crack heads in if you get a little too aggressive, but they'll, by and large, allow protests. Because they feel there's no leverage. You don't have any leverage. You're not exerting any leverage. You're not actually exerting a threat. I'm not talking about a violent threat. I'm talking about threatening them with your wallets.
Correct. And I had this conversation, I think it was the first time I was ever on a panel. Somebody said, how do we show, excuse me, how do we show Wall Street, or how do we show big money that we are a part of the ecosystem? And a lot of people say, you got to boycott white businesses, you got to boycott these big chain stores. And I say the system is going to go on without you anyway. The rich will continue to get richer. Those who do not care, or those who have the disposition to be able to, let's say, okay, I don't have to spend $4,000 on a car right now. Those are the people that you got to reach to say, okay, I got to put my money in this cause instead of supporting it. You got to get that working class, that upper middle, that upper class. You got to get them to care about it. And sadly, I'm here to say that that's probably not going to happen for the foreseeable future, near future. And a problem with that is that the economic capital of the Black community, of Black and brown communities, especially in America, or we can even say across the world now that we're starting to see it, is at a point where the only thing we have left is our lives. So we have to somehow take this movement and really unify the idea that we are one body, we are one person, we are one unified thought. And that thought is the thought that needs to scare them the most, because if you stop general consumerism all across the board, and I mean all across the board, you're getting changes like that. I promise you, you're getting changes like that. But the more it splinters, and it's not the fault of the protesters, like you just said, it's not saying don't go and protest. You need that awareness. You need to try to get more people to say, wow, I looked outside my window today and I saw 300,000 people marching. What was that for? You got to get that type of awareness out there. And that's an important factor, but it has to continue on further than that. And what I'm starting to notice, especially from this Ukrainian-Russian situation, what I'm starting to notice from the Uyghur Muslim situation is that we really view suffering as a trending topic that will eventually expire. And I'm sorry to tell you this right now, but the suffering of people will not expire until we either all kick up our heels and say we're not doing this anymore, or unless somewhere down the road, a government official, somebody who has the ability with a large reach to make social change, puts that policy into law. We need a full set from protesting on the ground all the way to, okay, this is a law. The reason why it's not happening is because they do not care. I can't make this, and I know that sounds doomerism. Oh, there's no hope, like they don't care. We have to make them care in all avenues of their life. Now, I'm not saying go and find, I'm not doing the thing, go and find a white person and go tell them in front of their faces, you should care. Like, you have to do it in a way where they can't ignore you. And right now, a lot of these protests have the ability to be ignored. I'll let you, like you just said, I'll let you all group up in Central Park and you can chant all you want. We're not going to do anything past that. We have to figure out the way to get them to do something past that, or else it disrupts everything. And that means that we're going to have to put ourselves on the front lines of saying, hey, like, and I'm just me personally, hey, I'll stand in the middle of 59th Street blocking all the traffic. If they want to remove me, that's fine, but I'm not moving until something changes, and you're going to have to take my life if that's the regard that we're going to have here. Because if it's not changing based on the fact that I'm complaining about it and people are dying, then more people going to have to die if that's the sake, but it's going to die with a purpose. And we have to stop ignoring that as a possibility, because we've always been at war with the system. We've always been at war with the people in power. And until they decide to turn their heads around, just like Joe Biden should, just like Kamala Harris should, just like AOC should, just like everybody, like we need them to be working on similar gears, and we need them to work on it now. Because we are getting older. This generation's getting older, and the new generation's taking over. And I really love the protesting, and I really love the activism that I'm seeing out of the younger generation, because it's astonishing to see how quickly they caught up on it, how quickly they understood the plight of the people that came right before them, and they understand that we're also fighting for them and their education and their freedom and their systemic placement, and how we can make their lives better. But until we get a united, pure front where we can send a message that hurts them in every single direction, they're going to keep figuring out ways to ignore us, and we cannot be ignored anymore.
That is a great way. That is a great ending point. Marquis, tell people where they can find you. You're a up and coming YouTuber. You're also on Twitch. Trust me, it's very hard to build a channel. So I want to make people aware how they could subscribe to you and watch you.
Great. I'll gladly do my exit outro. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked what you saw today, please do me a favor and follow me at twitch.tv/the_paradigm_shift. Please let Twitch know to give me back my username. I hate the underscores. But if you're a person who doesn't like the live, and you're a person who's like, I'd love to catch you, but I don't have the time to whenever you're live, well, find me at YouTube at youtube.com/c/theparadigmshift. No underscores. See how easy that is? We talk games, politics, we talk art. I'm here for you to make sure that you understand what's going on in the outside world from the position of a poor black man in Harlem. And maybe from that point, you can gain a little bit of empathy, and perhaps we can start a movement together. So if you're interested in that, please come join the shift. We'd love to have you.
And we will, the Twitch link is already in the description. I will put the YouTube page in the description too. So everybody subscribe, check out Marquis, because I think he is definitely not just on black issues, criminal justice issues, politics, period, is an up-and-comer, and I really appreciate having you on. We'll have to do it more often.
Yes, please. Thank you. You know where to find me. I know it's been tricky with everything that was going on, but I'm more than, I always enjoy these, and I always enjoy talking to you. So whenever you get something that comes on the top of your head, just let me know. I'm here.
Absolutely, man. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Same to you.
Don't go anywhere, because we got one more interview coming up that I think you're going to like. Remember to smash that like button. Let me read a couple more super chats that came. Chris Garrett, $5. Welcome back, Jordan. I hope you were able to disconnect from all this and reconnect with your lovely wife. I did some disconnecting. I kept up on what's going on, but there was at least one day in this mini vacation that I didn't look at my phone, which I'm kind of like an addict that way. So I did not look at my phone or news articles or anything like that. I kind of felt guilty because there's a war going on and I was laying out by a pool, but I already had this mini vacation planned. So what can you do? But we enjoyed ourselves. And thanks for the super chat, Chris. Das Bosch Fleisch, $4.99. I wonder how many bombs fell in Somalia today. I wonder as well. Very, very good point. Absolutely. And as a reminder, that clip we showed you of my interview with Breonna Taylor's aunts, that reporting is funded by you. So if you want us to continue doing on the ground reporting, which is very expensive, please support us. StatusCoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. You get great perks as a member. Now, speaking of support, for those of you that don't know, I interviewed Jen Dyes a couple weeks ago. Jen obviously was the co-founder of Status Coup, and she's now launching her own news outlet called Courage News. So I interviewed her about a week or two ago about her new outlet, what she's trying to do with it, and also ways you could support, because she does have a GoFundMe going. So I'm going to play that interview because some of you might have not seen it because YouTube doesn't notify people of all our content. So I want to make sure people saw our interview. We'll also put the GoFundMe link for Jen's new outlet in the description, in the super chat. Pitch in any amount you can. Obviously, big amounts make a difference, but small amounts also make a difference because it's not easy without corporate funding, which she is not taking corporate funding to fund a brand new news outlet. If you haven't seen it, here's my interview with Jen on her soon to be launched news outlet. Jordan Chariton, Status Coup, joined by Jen Dyes, the co-founder of Status Coup, and is now launching her own brave, intrepid news outlet. Jen, what is the name of the news outlet you are currently working to launch?
I'm so excited. It's called Courage News. And while Jordan, you know, from when we started Status Quo, it took forever to find a name. And I've always said, like, you're the best at naming things. You're always the naming things guy. Even then, like, it took us forever to land on Status Quo. And so in the search for this new name, I was like shocked to come across couragenews.com. The site's not set up yet, guys, but that it was available. I had to pay a premium price for it, but it was like, yes, this is what I want, Courage News. And
did this have anything to do with your obsession with Bobby Kennedy?
Bobby. Yeah, it did. It had to do, well, Profiles in Courage, JFK, it absolutely did. You're good call. Good call, Jordan. You know, my Kennedy obsession.
So the obvious question is, as you and I used to talk about with Status Coup, there's way too much content out there. We have big tech platforms suppressing all of us. It is hard to get attention unless you are basically doing conflict, reactionary bullshit, and nonsense. So it's pretty daunting to try and, I mean, it was daunting when we did it with Status Coup in 2018, but it's pretty daunting in the year 2022 without massive funding to launch your own thing. Why did you want to do this? And what are you planning to do that's different that is already out there?
So, well, one thing that you and I have talked about a lot is the state of media, and not just mainstream media, but also independent media. And because it is so hard out there, even a lot of like so-called progressive leftist independent media folks are turning to clickbait, not even journalism, but yeah, let's call it clickbait journalism, where it's like, oh, this person said this about this person and this drama is going on in this space. And like the bread tube drama is like, it's like a disgusting circle of nothing. Like, what are we accomplishing? And so I think we need more outlets that are focused on the people, that are focused on these underreported stories. And you and I have a very similar like vision of what news should be and what stories should be focused on. And so that's what I think. We need more of this, more journalism that is for the people. So like the tagline that I'm using has to do with the focusing on the 99% of people out there, exposing corruption.
Absolutely. And I want to show everyone, if you needed a quick refresher of everything Jen has done at Status Coup, let's take a look.
Hey guys, Jen here. So I'm saying, what do you say to those who... I'm actually really nice.
Rare. And thank you. Thank you for your work, Jen. Thank you so much.
Hi, what's your name?
My name is Alan, and how we should have free health care and...
Wow. It's the legal weapon. It's the legal weapon right here.
I love New York.
If Biden and Camilla, if y'all think y'all gonna get in office and do lip service for 4 years, hell no.
Sorry for speaking out about health and safety concerns regarding to COVID-19.
It's been 115 days since Breonna Taylor was murdered.
I'm out here marching for Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, David McAtee, Mike Newby, anybody that's been affected by police injustice. I'm out here taking a stance. You stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything.
Working 2 and 3 part-time, low-wage jobs.
You getting locked up for being homeless? That's not right.
Despair.
Really, how do you want to spend the remainder of whatever time we have left? How do you want to spend that time? And I want to spend it working for justice.
And I'm proud of your boy.
They wanted to beat up some Connie. So you guys are the first ones to say it, but I'd like to say mission accomplished.
Put that down the memory hole.
No, I'm talking to this guy here. Okay.
Looking around all night trying to find you. I waited for it to clear out and I see you and I just wanted to meet you really. And
that's awesome.
So that, honestly, that is everything you did over several years here on a shoestring budget. We had no corporate funding. We basically did it through GoFundMe and small dollar membership. And honestly, as we always talked about, it takes a lot of sacrifice. I mean, to do that kind of work, it's a lot of weekends. It's not 9 to 5. It's juggling 4 or 5 hats, playing reporter, researcher, producer, guest booker. You did a lot of the logistics. It is daunting, but I think you would also say doing that kind of work where you're out there with people, not just reacting to other people's commentary, it is also liberating and in short supply.
Absolutely. And, there's nothing else that I would want to do. Even watching my own clips back, it's like, yes, this is what I want to do. This is my purpose in life. And I've had kind of a renewed perspective, I guess, since I caught, many of you may know that I caught COVID back in November of 2020. Was it 2020? Yep. At the Rudy Giuliani face melting press conference. And I ended up with long haul COVID, which has really knocked me down flat. I still suffer. And there was a point, and you remember this, Jordan, like I would sob, like, I don't think I'll ever be able to return to journalism. Like, this has ruined my life. So the fact that I'm so grateful that I'm not, more affected. I am able now to report again. And so it's given me a renewed perspective. Like, yes, I have this mission to do good journalistic work, and it could have been taken from me, but there's a reason that it wasn't, that it hasn't. There's a reason that I'm driven to do this. And yeah, I'm so passionate about doing actual journalism, about talking about stories and breaking stories that matter.
And I also think it's important not just to have Status Coup, what you're launching, Courage News, but frankly, there's a whole lot of people that sit in a studio telling you the world and telling you, this is the way politics works, and telling you this is the way corruption works. And not that they're dumb people, but they're not on the ground with actual people. So they don't see the corruption up close. They don't see the injustice up close. Maybe they have a perspective, and some of them I like, and I like their perspective, but they are just as disconnected in some cases as corporate media figures, even in our own independent media sandbox. So that's why it's so important. And when I'm not on the ground, I mean, I haven't gone on the ground in recent weeks because of the COVID spike, and I didn't want to get it twice. You get disconnected. So that's why I believe it is extremely important that you're starting this, for people to support it, because we're in short supply of actually seeing, hearing, and feeling from actual everyday people on the ground.
100%. There's something that's so different about being out there, talking to people from different walks of life who've gone through different things. It's something you can't just sit in a studio and expect to have, true perspective. And so that's something, we share a passion for this. Like you and I have traveled all over the country, seen so many things. I think about the people all the time, the people in Flint. One of our friends from Flint just passed away, Tony, which is horrifying. And you think of the people in Kensington and Philadelphia, where we reported on houselessness and the drug crisis there. The people in West Virginia and Kentucky who are being evicted, or corporate overlords are taking over and kicking people out of their homes, and the wildfires, and there's so much out there that you just can't get or understand in a studio. I also want to point out that it's really distressing to me that so many in independent media are, let's just say it, they are selling out. Peter Thiel money is all over the place in indie media right now. And I feel a commitment to kind of rail against that, because it's becoming a huge problem. I'm sure you folks watching this have seen some of your faves change their tune. And you got to look at why that is. And that's something I will never do. And I know that's the same for you, Jordan. Like, you'll never fall into that trap that some of these folks are.
Oh, it definitely hurts when I dare criticize Joe Rogan. We lose subscribers, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think myself and you definitely agree. We'd rather actually sell out and go like work in corporate America or something than like just play for clicks, which is actually not a good business model. It's a lot better to play for clicks.
Well, some of the problem is like, it's not even just, it is playing for clicks, but also it's leading people down a really dark, horrible path. Like taking people who are leftists and who like followed some of these folks because of like, Bernie policies and wanting good progressive change, but they're leading these people down a Peter Thiel laden golden path. And he's not the only one. That's just the one that I'm like furious about right now.
Yeah. No, the road to nowhere. It's a road to purity, but it's a road to really no actual effectiveness. You're going to have to pay the bills. It is very hard to start a new outlet. It will not succeed if it's just you. You're going to need help. You have a GoFundMe going on right now. Let's put it up here so people could see. I've raised over $1,000 of your $25,000 goal, which is pretty impressive since you haven't been on many shows or anything like that. But I
honestly haven't really promoted it that much yet. I've been kind of, and actually this was, I was actually speaking to Abby Martin like right before launching this. We met for dinner, and she convinced me. She's like, slow down a bit, like. Take some time, because as you know, like we never take time off, like never take time to breathe. So it was like this space where it's like, okay, take time to breathe. I found the name, and I was like, let's go. And she was like, just relax a bit. It'll be there. So I actually haven't promoted it that much. So to already have this amount of support is great. I am now ready to go like full throttle. Is that the word you use? Whatever. I'm ready. I'm going all in now. I'm going to start start reporting. I have had people pitch me stories, so it's not just going to be me. I have a few women who will be reporting, and I want to have really diverse voices as well. So I'm so excited. I'm going all in on this. I really think it's going to be good. And you guys know me at Status Coup. I'm not going down any dark path. I only will report the truth. I will only report what matters. So your support means the whole world. And it's really, really needed. At this point, I've funded everything to do with Courage News by myself. And it's too hard. I can't do that anymore. Yeah, I do. I have a need to pay the bills, and I've got two growing boys and a real passion for this. So I'm nervous. It's hard, as you know, Jordan, to launch your own thing, and it comes with a lot of stresses and a lot of wondering, like, how is this going to work? But I believe in it, and I know that it will, and I know that it's needed. So yeah, any amount helps. You guys spreading the link around, following the social medias. There will be a Substack, and eventually I'll, get up a membership model and all that stuff. But I'm at this point needing funds to get launched truly.
Absolutely. And I will directly, let me zoom in so people can see it here, directly ask people anything you could do. You got $30, $50, $25, $64, just the last couple donations that came in. But even 5, 10, I mean, anything you could do, every donation matters. When we were doing it for Status Coup, it really builds up. The goal was 25,000. Right now they've raised, Jen's raised over 1,000. So, hey, if every single person watching right now could pitch in $5, $10 for those that have deeper pockets, it really, really makes a difference. Because I got news for you. When it was Jen and I starting Status Coup, we would not have been able to go to Flint. We would not have been able to go cover, the fight against the Mountain Valley Pipeline, repeated trips to Flint, Seattle. I mean, we went to Vancouver. We would not have been able to do it without the support of people. So definitely type it in. I'll put it in the description too, the GoFundMe link. But any amount really makes a difference because it requires paying freelancers, equipment, data plans. I mean, you name it. People don't even know the half of it. That's why most people sit in the studio. That's why most people sit in the studio and pontificate, because it is a lot more expensive to do it this way. I know it's kind of still under construction, but we will put the GoFundMe definitely in the link in the description. Is there a website yet? Is there an email list? Because there's other ways people could support.
Yes. So 1 second, let me go to my Twitter. So on Twitter, you can follow at courage_news. And on Insta, it's at Courage News Network. Facebook, it's Courage News Network. Now, I do have a website, but it's not launched yet. I have the domain name. It's just a kind of a resting page right now, but that'll be up soon, guys. But if you go to tinyurl.com/Jen's List, and you can find that on my Twitter too, at Jen Elizabeth J. You can sign up for notifications. You can be the first to hear about the true launch and the stories that I'll be working on and that others are working on. And yeah, so again, go to Twitter at courage_news, and also tinyurl. tinyurl.com/Jen's List. And you can get on for notifications.
And we'll put those in the description too. So if people are kind of getting lost, they'll be in the description.
I know it's a lot of assignments, but the main thing, please help out with the GoFundMe if it's financially feasible for you.
Yes. And seriously, there it is. Let me zoom out. So it has the video that we played, and you could donate any amount. It really makes a big difference. Listen, frankly, there's a lot of people with passion, but not, no pun intended, courage to actually step out of, clickbaity commentary and actually get out there. There's actually not a lot of people with the actual work ethic and will to go out, cover protests, go travel, cover things, talk to people, deal with sources calling you at all times of the day and weekend. You've dealt with it. I've dealt with it. It's a labor of love. So support Jen if you can. And, you know, if it grows, it won't just be Jen, like she mentioned, other women journalists, hopefully people that, you know, are just, you know, have some talent, but haven't had opportunities elsewhere. So support Jen if you can, because I could tell you from experience, it ain't easy. So it takes a village. Definitely support her. Anything else you want to let everyone know?
No, just I love you all out there in the audience, and I'm so excited about this. And I hope you'll come with me on this journey of launching Courage News. So you guys love Status Coup. I love Status Coup. And we need more of that. And so that's, you know, Courage News will be, you know, another leg in good, honest, independent journalism.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. I will definitely be monitoring, see how this goes.
Yay. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern time. So that was, hold on. That was my interview with Jen a couple weeks ago. I want to update you because she has raised more money. If I could figure out how to do this. There we go. So her GoFundMe is now up to $2,240 out of the $25,000 goal. The last donations were a couple days ago. I am asking all of you. We got almost 200 people watching. Obviously, if you can't donate, you can't donate. You know, we totally understand. If you can, nearly 200 people watching. If every person watching right now gives $5, that's $1,000. If every person watching right now gives $10, that's $2,000. If some people could give more, you get the pattern. I wouldn't be asking you if I didn't want and feel a very important need for Jen's outlet, Courage News, to launch and to grow. If Status Coup did not have significant GoFundMe donations, we would not have been able to travel. If we were not able to travel, we would not have been able to cover important stories, and we would not be able to build a membership model, which obviously was important. It was important to build a membership model to continue funding the on-the-ground reporting. But the most important thing is you need that money, that seed money in the beginning to fund on-the-ground stuff, even if it's more local. You know, Jen lives in Maryland, so even if it's going to DC, if she's going to pay other reporters, she mentioned some reporters that wants to sign on, got to pay them. You know, she's not independently wealthy with money growing out of her backyard trees. So if you could support her, I'd appreciate it. Obviously, she would appreciate it. You know, bottom line, we could shit on the corporate media all day, but if we're not willing ourselves to help build more independent media, not people sitting in a studio, but people going out there and giving the microphone back to the people, or, you know, whatever Courage News's tagline is going to be, then we're not putting our money where our mouth is. Of course, if you don't have additional funds to support Jen, like she would say, you know, she doesn't want to put you in a bad position. But if you do have $5, I think that's the minimum on GoFundMe. $10, anything you could do. Jen was instrumental on building Status Coup. We would not be where we are without her. So I want to really, really implore you, as if I was asking you to donate to me. Obviously, I'm not, but with the same vigor, please support her. Please donate. If you can't donate, you can share the link on your social medias and encourage other people to. So Courage News, GoFundMe is in the description, and any amount, it makes a big difference. And thank you. We just got, she just got an anonymous donation for $25. So keep those coming, any amount. And the bottom line is, you know, as I always said with Status Coup, it's really not about me. And in the case of Courage News, it's not even about Jen. I mean, you might love Jen. You might not even be that familiar with Jen's work. Maybe you're a new subscriber to Status Coup and you haven't seen her work. Forget Jen in particular, whether you love her, whether you don't know her, whatever the case may be. It's about having more people on the ground, from protest, from other stories that she has covered on the ground, doing investigative reporting, as she's been talking about. She herself is doing some separate investigative work on MPP, Movement for a People's Party, which Status Coup has done some reporting on. It's important because there are a lot of channels out there that are basically talking about the same shit over and over again, just from a studio. I love a lot of those channels. I watch a lot of those channels. I respect a lot of those channels. It's just a different thing when people go on the ground and actually talk to people and show you what's going on. And you're able to break a lot more stories investigatively by going on the ground, because when you go on the ground and you talk to people, you tend to start figuring out where the bodies are buried, where corruption is going on in local communities, in states, et cetera, et cetera. So I could just ask you from the bottom of my heart, support her if you can, any amount. Let's get that. You know, it's at 2,000. Let me show you again. It's at 2,265. I think it's doable this weekend to get that past 3,000 if everybody pitches in something. Again, if everybody pitches in $5, that's $1,000. So please, if you can, support it. Ron Pacone is in the super chat. I'm sure he would suggest supporting Jen's Courage News, and it makes a difference. And by the way, it's also not, you know, she mentioned it, but she's got 2 kids. So obviously, you know, Jen's got some bills to pay. She's a working journalist. You know, she's not a CNN anchor getting paid out the ass. So you're not only supporting Jen, you're supporting, you know, her putting food on the table for her kids and all that. So, and I definitely would not be telling you to support this if I did not expect great work from Jen and whoever she's able to bring on, you know, as writers or whatever else. So pitch in any amount, makes a big difference. Thank you. And she's in the super chat right now, you know, so you can get information. I put in the description the GoFundMe link, the email list. I'll also put the Twitter, the Instagram, all that good stuff too. So thank you. Is this happy hour? No, I avoided happy hour. There's a war going on, so I don't really want to be like drinking on camera and having fun as there's a war going on. So we'll resume happy hour, Friday happy hours at a different time. So no, this is not happy hour. And I'll just read this, you know, real talk from Jen. I'm struggling financially at the moment, which is hard to admit, but I believe in good journalism and the mission. So, you know, I always keep it real. She's keeping it real right now. And, you know, and any help in getting started is very much appreciated. So bottom line, if you value Status Coup, even though Jen's not here anymore, know that Status Coup, she played a big role, a big role in getting us to where we are. So do it for Jen, do it for me. Most importantly, do it so we have more on the ground journalism. Jen is not far from DC, so she could be doing a lot more investigative stuff in DC. Look at where the bodies are buried there. And there's a lot of bodies buried in that swamp, in addition to other stuff she could do. So if you can, support her GoFundMe. I know she appreciates it and I appreciate it. That's all I got. Again, we'll put all the links in the description for her GoFundMe and all that other, her Twitter, Instagram, all that. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at it next week. Again, thanks to Steve and Tina for filling in for me this week while I was away. Happy to be back now, slightly refreshed. But in this line of work, you go on vacation and then you're burnt out again in like a couple days. So anyway, I feel good now. Thank you for watching. Please support Jen's GoFundMe one more time. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.